Long pants are here. Bring on spring, eh? Apparently the days are getting longer. If those who are living without hope, we've passed the shortest day, so that's a good thing. Hopefully we'll just get ourselves organised. Thank you, Bob, for all the things you do behind the scenes. He's been here since the crack of dawn, and there's been a worship time, and he had a whole lot of stuff to put on the internet, including my late sermon, so he'll be here with us in a minute. I guess the last series we've been going through is the apprenticing to Jesus. What helps us to actually follow Jesus, and what are the practices that actually help us to actually, what Vicky said this morning, like we know the truth in our heads sometimes, God's there, but we act and live out our everyday like it's all up to us. And that's, I don't know, that's a human thing to do, isn't it? I think most of us have been taught to actually try and do the right thing, try and solve it all yourself, try and actually work out your life. And when it doesn't work, then maybe God will be of use. Morning, Luke. It's lovely to have you here. Now I can start. I've just been waiting. It's been a warm-up since now till now. So following Jesus, one of the things in this series has been this whole idea that what are the practices that help us to be more aware that God is in our lives, in our world, because often in the media and in the talk around town on the internet, it's just chaos. And that is a real tension that our young people particularly are feeling earlier and earlier. Their childhood, my childhood, I didn't have a clue about the world till probably 24 when I got married. There's a sense where I grew up just going, it's a great world to explore, it's an adventure. And now it's like, my kindergarten grandkids know about the war in Ukraine, this, that, and the other thing, and they're wondering whether they're ever going to make it. So following Jesus is more than just applying principles. Sometimes in church we think if we just do this, this, and this, it'll all work out. But I want to unpack this morning a little bit of this idea that Jesus came and it was more than just doing the right thing by him, like an apple a day keeps the doctor away, but he came and actually connected to the human race very personally. Not just by bringing the principles, do this and you get to heaven, don't do that and you go the other side, but it's actually more than that. So even if we're practicing some of the principles like solitude and Sabbath and reading scripture and praying, sometimes we still feel God seems to be a long way away from our real world. Issues, painful circumstances, including death, gnaw at our hearts. There are real fears, real anxieties that all of us, no matter what age group we're in, it's part of the human condition for that gnawing feeling to go, if we don't do this, maybe it won't end well. And today I want to just look at this little principle that the example of Christ's life, death and resurrection. How do we connect to this event in history that changes the centre of our world, or can change the centre of our world? There are in this particular passage in John chapter 11, it's interesting. It's coming to the pointy end of Jesus' ministry. He's been around doing things, miracles, teaching, and the resistance to his new way of being, and that God is much closer than you realise. It's not just about obeying the right thing, doing the right thing, that'll get you close to God. Jesus comes and he starts in this teaching moment in history. He's actually showing us a different way to relate to the God that we worship. He's showing us that there's intimacy, there's connection, there's a sense of he knows us by name. We are not just apprentices at this point. He's wanting us to be in friendship with him, to be in relationship with him. He actually knows our pain, anxiety, and says, I will walk this journey with you. Will you let me in? And so there's a bit of fear in his disciples that they joined him feeling very privileged, that they were going to conquer the world and they were going to be the top, like the princes of the new kingdom, and they would have power. And 3 years in, there's a whole thing going down now. The Jewish people some of the leaders are not happy with Jesus. There's death threats. Interesting, some of our politicians, some of our football players, when it doesn't go well, the death threats are coming. There's a whole media campaign to go, we need to be careful how we treat people, even if they're professional sportsmen or politicians. We still need to honour them, even if they're not doing a good job. And so at the end of this, in this story, as it unfolds, the disciples are under pressure. Jesus is under pressure, and the spotlight's on him, to the point where death threats are real. And so here we have three characters, one like my three kids, there's Martha, Mary and Lazarus. And they're peers, they're siblings, and maybe each of those has a different, one might be going, how do I know I'm loved? Maybe one of these characters is, how do I survive? And maybe one of these characters you could maybe guess, will I be safe? And so in these three characters, that's all of us in the room in some way this morning, we've all got a question that gnaws at us. Will I be safe? Or will I be loved? And what happens if I'm not feeling loved? And will I survive? Will I actually survive through this life? And so these three characters, they're called Jesus' friends. Like, he actually uses it not as an Airbnb, but he actually, when he comes to Jerusalem, he actually hangs out with these people. They have meals. He sleeps over. There's a real friendship in these three brother and sisters. And it says here pretty clearly, right at the beginning, it says, so although Jesus loved Martha, Mary and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days. And finally he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. The context for this is Lazarus is really, really unwell. And I love the fact the premise here is that even though things are not going well, it's very clear that Jesus loved these three. He was involved in their life. It mattered to him how they were going. And the first question I wanted to ask this morning is, do you trust God with your bad news? Sometimes we're going, we don't want to bother you, there's a whole lot of things going on in the world, so we'll just be in our misery by ourselves. The worst thing about emotional and physical pain is to not be able to share it, not to know that there's somebody who actually cares enough for me to go, I'm really doing it tough this week. Who do you share that with in your everyday life? In this passage, Martha and Mary know that Lazarus is so sick that he may not make it anymore, like he's going to die. And so Jesus is not with them. He's not very far away, mind you, and he hears the message, that says this, that Lazarus is not well and he's going to die if you don't come. And it says here, he waited a period of time. I don't know about you, but some of my painful moments, I'd like to instantly solve it. And Marianne and some other teachers in my life have said, what does the pain give you an opportunity for? And sometimes my pain is when God says to me, slow down, don't try and solve it yourself, don't get isolated. Will you actually trust me with your present pain, not just your past pain? And some of us in church this morning, you're here because there's a sense where some things in your life are probably going really well, but there are also little things that are happening in your life that go, it feels a little bit more fragile when I wake up in the morning. And so his disciples even went, when they heard the news about Lazarus, one of them said, let's not go there because you're going to get killed. If we go back there, we're going to be in danger as well. So sometimes some friends or acquaintances, when we tell them what's really going on, they kind of draw back because they don't want to get involved in any more pain. There are some people that do that. Here in this story, we see that Jesus finally says in verse 14 of chapter 11, so he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead, and for your sakes I'm glad I wasn't there, and now you will really believe. Come, let's go and see him. Kind of upside down kind of statement, isn't it? If Jesus really cared, doesn't he just go rush there? And so in this, there's some tension in this story because Lazarus is loved by Jesus. He makes that really clear. But these couple of days seem to have mattered, and it's not going to end well. And now, as Jesus comes back into Bethany, where Lazarus used to live, that we see in verse 32 that he says this: When Mary arrived and saw Jesus, she fell at his feet and said, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." It's interesting that sometimes in our everyday walk, as we try and practice and be an apprentice to Jesus' way, there are moments where we feel like it's not. I don't know whether we want to keep going because it's just too hard. And Mary loves her brother. Probably one of the sources of income into that little family system is the brother. And he's the patriarch in that little system. So her sense of, am I safe, probably is now raised up to a high alert level, because how are we going to survive, even economically? How are we going to do this? And she's like so sad. And it's an awkward emotion, because here's Mary coming to Jesus, who she trusts, and she's had some amazing conversations with, and knows that Jesus loves her, but she comes with an awkward emotion like, if you're only here. Can I say that to you, Jesus? Like, should I just try and be holy and try and do the right thing? But she goes, if only you were here. I don't know about you, but I've woken up in the last 2 weeks going, if only this happened, it would be good. Where are you in this bit? Some of the people we're praying for as a church, it doesn't all end in kind of a beautiful Disney on Ice experience where everything feels wonderful. There are moments where it feels really dark, really like, where are you, Jesus? And so in trusting Jesus, Mary trusts Jesus with her awkward emotions and expresses it this way. Verse 33, when Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was deeply troubled. Where have you put him? He asked them. They told him, Lord, come and see. And then Jesus wept. And the people who were standing nearby said, see how much he loved him. We're talking about God, we're talking about Jesus, the Son of God, and we're talking about Jesus who says, if you see how I treat the human race, individuals, that's how the Father sees the human race. Not as a big ultimate judge of everything, but he sees it and he weeps for the condition of the human race. He weeps with you when we bring our awkward emotions towards him. I've learnt over the years to go, I don't have to make it all like, a Panadol with some sugar coating. I can just bring my pain directly to the Father, to Jesus, and he sees it and he understands, because he's lived in the body of Jesus, he knows what it is to weep. He knows what it is to lament. He knows what it is to feel like another mini death has happened. And so for me, it's a beautiful reminder, this story, that the story of the New Testament is not just about obeying principles. It is about that, but it's more than that. It's an invitation to walk our everyday life out with a person, an entity, God, who says, I get it. He felt Mary's pain to the point where he bawled his eyes out. And in Jewish culture, that's not something you really do every day. He knew it, and it moved him inside to go, I really never planned for death to be part of the human race. It is shocking. Some of us have dealt with death just in the last few months and weeks. Yeah. Yes, I would please say. Yeah. Thank you. That's good. So here we have that. There's an anger. He brings something to the table and he says, all right, where is this? Where is Lazarus? Where's he buried? I like this. Sometimes we go, Jesus is just a kind, he doesn't feel too deeply. Let me say to you, humans are made in his image, and he feels sin. He feels pain. He feels what goes on in our everyday little lives. And I like this because it gives me hope. Because sometimes when I pray, it doesn't all go away. It's still, circumstances still remain the same. Many times it helps me to reframe that, to know that somebody's walking with me, knows my thoughts, knows my anxiety. And so Jesus is still angry. He's walking there's a whole lot of chatter in the group of people walking with him. Someone going, oh yeah, what are we doing here? I guess he's going to pay his respects. And there's some religious leader in these groups who are going, he better not do anything that's not kosher, because we're going to go and report him to the higher orders, because you can't do anything with this. So Jesus is still angry as he arrives at the tomb, a cave, with a stone rolled across the entrance. Roll the stone aside, Jesus told them. Now, you're hoping, everybody's hoping that Jesus can do miracle, but this one's a new one. You can't do much when there's a corpse inside there. And Mary, who's the ever-practical woman, goes, just has a word in season like a mum. Here's the mum statement. But Martha, the dead man's sister, protested, Lord, he's been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible. We're talking a real-life story here. We're not making up. Christianity and Jesus is not a fairy tale where it all just is beautifully unpacked. It's tough. Jesus is confronting the death of his friend, and he is grief-bound, and he's sad at the loss. And one of the things I get reminded of regularly is that when I go and I want to just feel like, pity me, I have somebody in Jesus that says I can identify with every emotion you're going through, everything you hit, every frustration. I've been rejected, I've been spat on, I've been cut off, I've been dissed, I've been isolated. This is the Jesus that we've come to worship in communion. It's not a God that's a long way away. It's God in us who came to rescue the human condition. So can we trust Jesus with our grief and loss? Some of us, some grief and loss we just have to wear because it's pain. It's part of renting our body in the human condition is we pay rent, we pay sadness, and grief is part of it. But there's a lot of suffering in our Western culture that we don't need to suffer at that depth and have that much anxiety, because Jesus says something very beautiful. He said, didn't I tell you that you would see God's glory if you believe? When we go to God with our grief and loss, when I go to God with my grief and loss, there are moments where I need to sit, and there's a little cynical voice in me go, oh, it's all dead and it's never going to be fixed. But there's also a part of me that goes, God, I want to see your glory revealed. I want to see kingdom come. I want to see something beyond my depression and this circumstance. Can you remind me that you are for me, with me, and you're not far away? What a beautiful thing. So in this conversation, I want to remind myself, as I've prepared for this the last couple of weeks, I realised that I've got a granddaughter going from year 6 to high school next year. Top of the rank, and there's a mini death coming. In terms of not in physically, but she's coming to the end of her primary school years, best years of our lives in many ways, and now she's got to go, what is going to happen next? I'm feeling like I would like to be a primary school kid forever. Some of us, there's things in our marriage where we go to bed, we're still married, but we don't talk much anymore. There's so much between us. There's kind of like a mini death in our marriage. In our families, there's stuff with our kids and grandkids where we long to be loved, and as a grandkid and as a daughter, to be loved. But there seems like the offences, what happened in the past, is actually breaking us, and we have a mini death. We feel like we're at the end of ourselves. Maybe nobody else has felt like that, but there are things happening that actually tragic moments. It's not sometimes the tragedy that holds us back, it's our memories and how we can't let it go because we feel like part of our soul got ripped apart back then, and it's really hard to recover. Even our youthful body, I liked it. I sort of tamed it down a bit, but the author was talking about when you get to 70, you're officially old. Doesn't matter what you do. I'm coming close to that, and it's like you're officially low. It doesn't matter what you eat, what you exercise, what positive attitude you had, what surgeries you've had. The fact is, you're going to grieve your old body. It's no longer helpful if you stay in 70 and think, I'm just going to do another thing to make me feel youthful again. You'd be disappointed. But if you accept that mini death is there, there's some of the happiest people on the planet are in their 70s. They don't have to go to work every day. That they can choose to turn off their phone and there's no consequences except for angry grandkids or whatever. But here's the point. Unless I accept the mini deaths in my life, I keep collecting them and I become more and more bitter, twisted and sad. And part of the story of Jesus is death is part of it. Accepting the mini moments where it hasn't worked well, processing his griefs can awaken a new zest for life and joy. Life and joy does not depend on our circumstances. If Jesus is in us, we know that he's for us, and we know that can I choose to trust Jesus even in a mini death moment? Righto, we're over halfway, we'll go quicker in this next bit. But so this is what Jesus said. This is why, for me, it's more than just trying to do the right thing by Jesus. It's actually realising that Jesus had a mission when he came into our world. Over there, anybody into, Pete and Vicky, you're into agriculture. You probably can't see it well, but there's a whole cycle. Sometimes we have one grain of wheat and we can hold on to our little life and go, I'm going to hold this is very important. And Jesus said something about that. He said, unless a grain of wheat gets planted, it just remains alone. And Jesus said, this is part of my mission for coming to the world in John 12. I tell you the truth, unless a kernel of wheat is planted in the soil and dies, it remains alone. But its death will produce many new kernels, a plentiful harvest of new lives. Jesus saying, I came and I showed you how to live, but I also showed you how to die, and there's hope on the other side, and we can have a look at that. The kernel wheat represents this. It holds the possibility of a new life. In my life, if I choose to just hang on to my life, it says I can't really grow beyond my mini deaths. They keep holding me back to finding zest and living life to the full. And so what I have to do is I actually have to say, and this is what this is the upside down kingdom in Jesus' world. He says, unless you give your life away, unless you acknowledge the mini griefs, your sin, your limitations, the circumstances, you'll never actually be able to go into a new awakening, a new kind of part of your life that actually brings life and zest. And there's more to life than just having to pay rent for your existence. You can read the rest later, but let's get on with the story towards this. It's beautiful. So this is in chapter 12 now. We've seen that Lazarus at the grave. Jesus is there. He's angry. He's wept. He's not happy. And we see this Jesus also on his own quest. He's not a God that is removed from the human race. He's right in the middle of this family. So in chapter 12, just in the next chapter, it says, Jesus arrives at Bethany. That's where the three lived. And the man Jesus had raised from the dead. And a dinner was prepared for Jesus in his honour. Interesting, isn't it? How would you feel? Just a few weeks before, the person that's sitting across the table from you was declared dead for 4 days. And so he's back here. He's sitting across the table from you. Mary's still doing Mary thing, which is trying to get all the hospitality right. Martha's kind of really interested in going, so other way, thank you, Marianne. Look, that's why you have wives, you know. So, you know, there's a new feast happening. There's a new run at this. And Mary seems to have got this moment. She's realised that Jesus isn't just a family friend. In the encounter, as she's listened to Jesus teaching, watched and heard about his miracles, she's realised something early. She's the early adopter. She's going, there's something profound in this is the Messiah. This is the God we've been looking for in Jesus. He is God. He hasn't told everybody, but they're sitting at the dinner. So Jesus, God, is actually at the table. Lazarus, who was dead a few weeks ago, is now alive and very much resuscitated so he can eat food. And Martha's still doing Martha thing, and they're sitting here and they're going to have a great feast. And this is what happens. There's another incredible thing that happens right in the middle of this dinner. Martha served, and Lazarus was among those who ate with him. Then Mary took a 12-ounce jar of expensive perfume made from the essence of nard, and she anointed Jesus' feet with it, wiping his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance. You know, when you know that God is for you, when you know that God in Jesus is the one who sustains your everyday life, whether it's having a good season or a bad season, when you know that in a here, not just here, you go all out. You're not trying to prove anything to Jesus. What you realise is that gift is so enormous, I'm going to do whatever it takes to actually let that people know about this beautiful thing, that God is with me. He is with me in my deepest anguish, and he's with me in my deepest joy. But that's here. Out of all the disciples, all the followers of Jesus, Mary is just a beautiful example to remind us of me that she could have come in and gone, this is a $70,000 bottle of perfume. Only movie stars would do that. It says over a year's wages. She could have come and just gone, oh, Jesus, I really love you. And she could have got one drop and gone, that'll do. I'm going to measure my love. Because I can't waste it. Because I know Judas is the treasurer of the disciples. He's going to be annoyed if I do what? Give the whole lot away. Some of us are living stingy lives towards Jesus. We go, we'll do a bit for you, but we can't. We're not really convinced that you are the centre of love and life and peace and joy. So I'll just come along and on Sunday and I'll do a few nice things and I'll dab a bit of perfume on. He's saying, no. Mary gets this. She gets a kingdom life. She says, Jesus, I'm going to give you my all. Because he's been talking about, remember, this is the last few weeks of the 3 years that he's been in ministry, and he's saying she knows, she has a hint of what's coming. And this is what she says. Then Mary took a 12-ounce jar of expensive perfume and made from the essence of nard, and she anointed Jesus' feet, with it wiping his feet with her hair. And Jesus then says to her, leave her alone, because Judas had a go at being practical. He said, leave her alone. She did this in preparation of my burial. Jesus is really clear. He came to show us how to live. He also showed us how to die. He understands death because his son, Jesus, went through the whole process. Everybody that he'd known pretty well had deserted him by the end of the cross. A few people in secret were there. So he knows isolation. He knows when you and I are holding on to things that are way harder to hold than we can imagine. And this is the invitation this morning. I'm going to finish here. This is a verse in the same chapter, and it says this. Jesus told her, I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live, even after dying. And everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die. There's a promise here that reminds me today that Jesus is offering to walk with me in the present day, tomorrow, through my own death, because there's a promise of the resurrection, because he has gone through and busted death. He's saying your sins I'm not going to hold them against you. Your anxieties, bring them to me, because I get it. I am the resurrection and the life. We don't come here and just remember Jesus' death and resurrection. We remember and we also relive that life in us. Jesus is alive in us. But like Mary, that's the question I want to leave with you this morning. Are you just given your leftovers? Are you just going, well, I'm going to play it each way? Or are you absolutely convinced, like Mary, that Jesus is the Son of God and says his power was shown when my brother who was dead for 4 days, when Jesus spoke into that moment, life was resurrected in Lazarus. Sometimes we make God just a little friend. He's not a friend, he's the one who sustains the universe, but he's interested in if there's a sparrow, he knows about it. He knows everything about us, and he says, I get it. Many deaths are part of life, and it's tough, but I get it. Will you say yes to his invitation this morning again? Even if you've been a Christian a long time, we get shallow again, and we get tempted to go, I'll just give you a bit of my perfume because I've saved this. This is really important to me. And I want to just ask you this morning, will you actually break the jar and go, I'm all out? No matter where I am, I know that you are so for me and in me that I'm going to give my life away, just like that little bit of rice or a little bit of wheat. You got one life. Will you give it away and let a crop of other people know the love of God? Or will you just hold on to it and only give your 10%? Father, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for this beautiful passage in Scripture where, Jesus, you really loved this family. And yet it wasn't perfect. They were normal.